And let's move on to the next example, which is about a different chart. And this time, originally, I prepared a different example. Some of you may have noticed that I changed the example because I think this is really interesting and also a hit topic these days, right? So let's think about the US presidential race that is going on. So one thing people care a lot about is who will become the next president. So basically people are doing a bunch of analysis, try to predict the winning probability. Right? So this time, let's say some modelers have developed models for us to monitor the winning probabilities of the candidates over time. And then what we want to do is to visualize how the winning chances of a candidate changes over time. So what plot do you think we need to use? What would you recommend? To monitor the trend of the changes of the winning probability yes, please. Line graph, exactly, right? We want to see how the line going up and going down, indicating that how the chance changes. Okay, so we need to first, some background about line graph. So the main function we're going to use is plot, very simple. It's actually plt.plot, right? It's still a function within the pyplot module. And for line graph, it's useful for visualizing the relationship between two data series or two columns in the data set, right? So as we will see, this time we want to visualize the relationship between one attribute, which is the time, and the other attribute is the winning chance. How winning chances are changing over time, okay? And before we actually dive into the main example, let's look at a simpler example just to quickly explain the main idea and main elements of a line chart, okay? So let's say we have a data table like this. Usually we plot y against x, right? Y is the quantity I want to monitor, let's say sales. X is the quantity that usually play a role in affecting the y variable, let's say price. Right? In general, we know that if you charge a higher price, sales go down. And then in order to do this, we're going to do import matplotlib. It's a new, we already did this, but then it's a new notebook. I have to do it again, okay, as PLT. Okay, once I import it, now things are pretty straightforward. plt.plot, that's how we create a line chart, okay? And then I'm going to include two lists of data points. For a data frame, we can directly take the columns, right? But we can also provide them as lists. So this time I'm going to plot x and y. So how x affects y. The prices are 5, 6.5, 7. Let's say 5, 6.5, and 7. And in the previous screen, we have sales, 30, 27, 19, 30, 27, 19, right? So it's actually, I provide x. I also provide y. That allows me to see how x affects y in this line chart. So plt.show. And that's the graph, right? So basically, we have two columns of data, and we directly added those two columns into this function. The idea is pretty simple, right? So the first price and sales pair is actually this point. 5 as the price, and sales volume is 30 units, right? And the second data point is actually 6.5 as the price. The coordinate on the x-axis is 6.5, and the y level, sales level, is 27. And then the third point is 7 as the price, 19 as the sales volume. So this, if you look at the lower point, the y-axis value is actually 19. The x value is 7 as the price, right? So then the function basically first plot those 3 points according to the given order, and then use lines to connect them to help you visualize how things change if I change x. Okay? So the order in which you supply the data to the function is very important. Right? If, let's say, your first, here in this data set we have 1, 2, 3. Let's say you first plot this data point 1, and then in the second row you have this data point. The third row you have the middle data point. And the plot you'll get to is going to be going from 1 to 2 and then back to 3. So it's going to be not a very good way of display the visualization, right? Because, well, it doesn't make sense that we have those kind of zigzags going forth and backward. So one thing important is that for the x variables, usually you want to have them ordered instead of having them randomly appearing in the plot, right? And we'll see a more detailed example in a few moments. Right? Questions? That's the simplest plot, and there's a bunch of elements we want to add to this plot. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Now let's go to the next part, and then we're gonna try to load the data. Sorry, let me remove the annotations. Okay, so again, we can go to Avenue to Learn. I think for in class to save some time, we can directly copy the GitHub link. So it's here, right? So the second to last file, and let me right-click, and then copy link, and then go back to the notebook. So we need to import pandas as PD again. It's a new notebook. Then we are going to do election. That's the name I want to use for this data frame loaded from the file, right? So then pd.read CSV, and then I want to include the file name, file path, but here it's again a URL. Run it. A typo, sorry about that. Okay, so then we can examine the data. So we can have election.head. It's a simple, data frame, right? So look at this table. We have rows, and here I'm showing only the first 5 rows. There are many other rows. So basically, 3 columns. The first column is the date, right? So you need a model to estimate the winning probability. So that's the model date. So the date on which people use this model to predict winning chance, right? So for every row, let's say the first row, we have the Democratic candidate winning chance of 45.24%, right? And the Republican candidate 45.39%. Fairly close. I mean, it may not be the reality. I mean, it's just something people are predicting, right? So, I mean, if you add those numbers, you will observe that it's slightly below 1 because there's always a very tiny chance an independent candidate can win the election, which is virtually impossible, but the probability is slightly above 0, right? So we just want to plot the winning chance against the time, which is the date in this model, right? So let's first look at the Democratic candidate, the Dem win probability against the date, and let's see how we can do that. Okay, but there's one thing we need to do, right? Because for box plot, so actually let's quickly do this. So the election.info, that's some function we used before, right? If you run this command, you will find that the data type of the model date column is something called object, right? Most of the time, when you see the data type as object, it means that it's a string, it's a textual data. But it's difficult to plot, a certain numerical attribute against the textual data because, that's not numbers, right? We need numbers. So let's try to do something before we proceed further, right? There's a function called, that's a function that came with pandas library. So pd.toDateTime that can convert strings, a column of strings to, a data format which is numerical. And more specifically, we have the date time stamp format of data, which is a particular kind of numerical attribute, right, that Python can actually handle. So we can do pd.toDateTime, and we want to do election, the data frame, and then model date. Okay, so we can, that will convert the model date column to the datetime format, but then it just generates a copy of the column and do the conversion, right? So one way to do that is that I'm gonna let it override the original column model date. Right? So I use this function to convert the values to the datetime format, and then I assign it back to the same column. That will replace the original column, right? So let's run it. No error, that's great. And then we can look at election.info again. And look at the information here, right? So the column 0, model date, now the format, the data format is datetime 64. So basically, it's a numerical attribute tailored for displaying or storing, data time, those time variables. Okay, so that will make it so much easier to handle. And do we have any questions for that? All right, so let's move on. One thing we often want to do is that we want to sort the values, because as we just mentioned, if you don't sort the values on the x-axis, things can be kind of messy, right? So let's first do election.head. And we'll see that for the model date column, well, we have descending order. Right? So most recent records appear first. That is totally okay. If it's ordered, descending or ascending, that's okay. But in other situations, things can get messy. So here, let me remove this command. Let me do ascending order. Okay, so that, it's not that the current format doesn't work, but I just want to show you how to sort things according to ascending or descending order. Currently, it's actually descending order, so let's change it to ascending order. So I'm going to do election, the data frame name, dot sort values. Okay, so that's going to sort the rows in this data frame. But then we do want to sort it according to the model date column, right? So by equal to model date. And that tells the data frame to sort itself based on the model date column, right? And I'm going to do ascending equal to true, right? By default, I think it's also ascending equal to true, but just in case sometimes we get confused, it's always a good idea to spell it out explicitly. Right? Ascending equal to true. And then we want to have in place equal to true, right? A parameter we have used before, right? Because generally, if you do something to the data frame, it will actually throw out a copy of the data frame according to your request. But then if you want to change the original data frame, include in place equal to true. Okay, so let me run it, and no error, that's great. And then let me do election.head to examine the data again. Now, things actually have changed in terms of the order for which the record appears in the table, right? So now it's the most remote date, the data set, by the way, starts from July 26th of this year as the earliest date. So now I sorted it according to ascending order, so that now it's actually appearing from least recent to most recent, right? So anyways, after I sort it, then I can do the line chart. Okay, so that's typically a step you always want to use in terms of plotting a line graph. Okay, so now let's plot the Democratic candidate's winning chance against the model date. So it's going to be PLT, right? And then I need to include X. And here, X is going to be PLT.plot for creating a line graph. Right? And then the X value is going to be the data frame name election. I want to select model date. Right? So on the horizontal axis, I want to have the dates. And on the vertical axis, I want to do election dem win. That's the probability of Democratic candidates winning chance. Okay, so let's see what happens. Before that, let's do plt.show. Okay, so that's the plot. It may serve the purpose, right? So we see a line, I mean, not a straight line, but a line graph that shows the ups and downs, the fluctuations of the winning chance over time, right? So that's how we can easily create the plot. And then we can, as before, as what we have done for the histogram, we want to use keyword arguments to do some customization, to include some detailed information to the chart, to make it more readable, right? So here are some of the stuff we want to do, right? So one thing is that we want to specify the color of the line, and the other is that I want to display some markers. Every marker is a point from the original data set, right? So later on, the line graph added the line by connecting the points. So by default, it's not shown, but sometimes it's helpful to show the original data points as markers. And title, label, and grid lines, right? And the X and Y tick labels, and so on and so forth. And so let's do plt dot plot, and then again election model date against election dem win. Okay, that's the basic version. And then I can already run it. It shows the same thing, right? But now let's add some keyword arguments. One thing we can do is color. Let's say color equal to blue. I mean, it's already blue, right? It doesn't make a difference, but it's a different kind of blue because for they use red for Republicans and blue for Democrats, so it's a good idea to use blue for this series. Okay, and then we can do line style. Let's say column, meaning that we want to use dotted lines, right? So now we have dotted lines. And then we can also do markers. So let's say marker. So we don't have enough space. Let me just change to a new line. Marker equal to, there's several options, right? We can use O. O means a circle, okay? So then we'll see that it added circles to indicate the original data points, right? So then after markers, we can also do something like, let's try this. Marker face, it's a bit long. Face color equal to, let's say I want to have the markers to have the color of green, okay? Sorry about that. Marker, another typo, okay? So, I mean, at least, inside the markers, it's filled with green color. That's slightly different, right? I mean, it's not too important, but depends on how you want to have the plot look like, okay? So that's one series. And then we can copy the whole command and then paste it. Now this time, just change one thing, right? Because I want to also visualize the winning chance of the other candidate. So then what I need to do is just to change the Y input, right? So Y input this time, let's include REP. So then color, of course, I guess we usually want to do red for Republican candidates. Line style, I can make it slightly different. Let's say dash and dot. So it we'll get a dash dot line, right? Marker, if you want to have, let's say star, and then it will show you star-shaped markers, right? Marker face color, let's also make it red, okay? So let's see what happens. Well, that shows you the trends, right? So now the star shape are the markers corresponding to the winning chances of the Republican candidate over time. So on the y-axis, we have the winning probabilities, and how it changes over time is indicated by those two line graphs. Okay, and then we want to do the same thing as usual, title, right? So that's the let's just call it U.S. election 2024. Winning chances, right? Now we have a title. We can have the PLT, another line, PLT dot X label. We can call X label actually date, right? And PLT dot Y label, we can call it winning probability. Okay, so that help us get the title, X and Y label, right? Let me just do one more thing. So let's also check the X ticks. X ticks, right? So actually we already have X ticks. Right? They have automatically included several dates, right? On the X-axis. Let's actually change it a little bit. So let's say I'm going to provide a list of dates, right? The first date is going to be 2024. Let's say the first date, July 26th. Okay. The second, 2024. Let's say August 2. And then the third date, 2024, August 6. And one more. Let's say 2024, October 3. October 1 maybe. I don't know if October 3 is in the data set. Anyways, sorry about that. Another error.
01.
Oh yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for helping me out. All right. So one thing not very nice here. Can you see what's not very nice? Yeah, this part, right? So, apparently the labels tick marks are very long. The labels are very long, so they're overlapping with each other. So what do you suggest to do in those cases? How intuitively can we make it better? Exactly, right? So maybe display them according to a certain angle. So we're going to say rotation equal to 30 for the X ticks function. Now it looks much nicer, right? So we rotate it. That's preventing the labels to overlap. So this makes things a bit nicer. All right, so that's how we can generate the plots, visualize the trends. Yes, please.
Why did you add the X ticks? I thought the dates were already there.
Oh yeah, that's automatic, right? So I want to add X ticks for two reasons. It's mostly just to demonstrate that we can customize it. Right? So sometimes you want to, here I didn't do that because it takes a little while to type in different dates. Sometimes it generates several dates, but you want to have more labels. Right? Maybe you want to display the X tick marks every day, and then you need to manually include more labels.
Oh, in this case, did you just pick random dates? Because the other ones, I guess, would be the actual dates, the one that started with.
Yeah. So I just throw in the random dates. Those are arbitrary, right? So you can change it. I just want to show two things. One is that you can customize it. The other thing is that they may have some overlapping, which disrupts the format, so we can do some rotation, right? In case you need to do similar things. All right. So then after done that, there are more things we can do. There's something called the FMT parameter. FMT is short for format. Okay, so nothing new from what we have already done, but sometimes it makes it more efficient for you to do the coding. So basically, save some typing. For example, what we can do is that let's remove color equal to blue and line style and also marker. Let's actually remove those information. Maybe I'll just remove also the marker face color to make it shorter, right, to better visualize. So I delete them, but I still need those parameters to control the color and shape of the line. So I can do a symbol, a text, a string value that includes 3 symbols. Right? So the 3 symbols will be, the first one controls the marker shape, right? Let's say O. And the second symbol controls the line style. Right? I can do dash, so that's a solid line, right? The third symbol this time will control the color. So if I do blue, just do B, okay? And then I can do the same thing for the other line graph for the Republican candidate. So it's a string value, and this first symbol is going to be the shape of the markers. We use stars, but let's use D for diamond, okay? And then let's do maybe dotted line, right? So that's the column. And third one, red. I mean, put the R there just to indicate that one red color. So then we can run the command again. Well, basically the same thing, right? But it makes the code shorter, somehow more efficient if you dislike typing a lot of information into the command. Right? And some different things, now the markers for the red series, red line, that becomes diamond instead of stars. Okay, so that's actually how we can more quickly control the line style, color, and marker shape. Okay, remove the whole bunch of keyword arguments, instead including this very concise command. Argument. Using only 3 symbols. Okay, questions? That's something we call the FMT parameter. In some versions of Python, you may have to use FMT equal to those 3 symbols, but sometimes in some versions you just remove FMT. Depends on whichever works out, right? So they update the language and the packages fairly frequently. So don't be surprised if things is updated into a new format. Okay, so some more information about the symbols for markers. Right? And the second symbol is for line styles, and the third symbol is for colors. So those are the options you can use. I mean, I think nobody can memorize all those stuff, right? So you just use this as a reference point to look up when you need them. Again, this is about FMT. Now let's actually do one more thing. I think I wanted to do this. Okay, so now from time to time we wanted to do some some annotation, right? So we have the line charts, which is nice. It shows the trends. But then, what if, say, I want to highlight a certain important event, right? So, for example, here, what I want to highlight is that one important event, which is the Democratic Party picked their VP candidate, right? So, and sometimes you want to see what is the impact. Is it positive? Is it negative? After you pick the VP candidate, things are trending upwards or trending downwards, and that will help you understand the, aftermath of that particular event, right? So one thing we know is that the VP candidate of the Democratic Party was picked on August 6th, okay? And then we want to, add an annotation in the format of several, a brief sentence or a short phrase near the X position of August 6th, right? And then let's go back to the plot. Let's see how we can do that. Okay. By the way, let's also do plt.show. I forgot to do plt.show, but it's still displayed the charts, right? So basically, August 6th is here, right? So to better visualize it, let's do one thing: plt.x vline. So that's something we have done before for the histogram, and it's the same thing, right? So x equal to 2024 August 6th. Okay, so let me add this line, vertical line. So I think, let me check where I did it wrong. So yeah, so I remembered. So again, this is because it doesn't work if you just feed a string value into the command. Again, we want to use pd.toDateTime to convert this date, right? Because it was just a string, but on the x-axis, we already have the numerical attribute in a datetime format. So then it should be okay. All right, so we saw this vertical line, and then we want to add some annotation as well. For example, if we think there's some space around here, maybe I can add a text that says that's the date on which we have the VP pick from the Democratic Party. Right, so let's finish this, and we can have this second break. So what we can do is simply do plt.text, and that's when we want to add the text value. Okay, and then we want to supply the x and y locations. So the x location, let me copy this pd to date time and paste it as the first input argument. So mean that I want to plot at this position, right? And the y location is going to be, let's say, around the y level of 0.60, okay, 0.6, okay? And then the annotation I want to use, the text I want to use is the dem BP pick, right? Maybe also include a angle symbol to serve as some kind of arrow. Let's see. Right, so that's the, or if you want to make it nicer, maybe angle and dot. Right, so that's how you can add some text to provide a bit more information to explain things, right? So there's this vertical line to indicate when this event took place, August 6th, right, the third tick mark. And then you can put a text to indicate what exactly happened on that date.